And we are live once again with the one and only, great, fantastic. Well, what else can I say? Absolutely right, always.
Oh,
LarryCJohnson, my good friend.
So I'll send you the paycheck again this month.
those
pay
$2.
to say all those nice things, yeah. Who said you couldn't be bought?
I still haven't managed to memorize that script that I made. You know, the Larry Bird of geopolitics, the Magic Johnson of intelligence. You know, I can even do like that. LarryCJohnson, my good friend. How are you doing, man?
Good, man. Thanks.
Fantastic. Larry, we had a very interesting video this week with Donald Trump. And I guess you have discussed, I'm always late for that. People decide to do the cool stuff on Thursdays or Wednesdays, and I always miss the cool stuff for the last. But in any case, let's start with something very simple. Germany.
Mm-hmm.
That's a mess.
Yeah.
I've seen the map of the voting, and then I saw, Megatron has posted the map of old Soviet Union, old divided Germany. Same stuff.
Yeah.
Same stuff, absolutely.
Yeah, what's remarkable is the number of people that think, oh, wow, look how well AfD did, Alternative for Deutschland. Man, they got 20% of the vote. I'm thinking, if you were a politician and you had 20% approval, you'd be in trouble. So, yeah, the opposition in Germany is growing, but let's not kid ourselves. It's still a small minority. It's 21%. Or think of it this way: 80% of the Germans voted for somebody else. Now, Germany, like France and like the United Kingdom, are fractured politically. Although the Labour Party in the UK did get a majority vote in the last election, that support has now completely cratered, and they are actually trailing one of the alternative parties, the Nigel Farage party, I believe. And even Farage is only, they only got like 30% support, 31, 32. They are minority parties. And, people say, oh, you just don't understand Europe. They do coalitions. Oh, go screw yourselves. Deal with reality. These are minority parties. There's not 50%, 60% of the people coming together saying, man, we think we're really in trouble here and we need to go a different direction. You're not getting that. Everybody's, they're pursuing their own separate little agendas. And what it means is Europe is irrelevant. There was a time where Europe was a major force in the world. I had to pay attention to it. Now, like some yappy little dog, demanding attention. But, what can they do? They can crap in the middle of your floor, piss on your furniture. But beyond that, there's no resources. Financial wealth is limited. Britain's got away with being a financial center for the world, and that's coming to I think a pretty quick end if you listen to people like Alex Craner and Tom Luongo. So it just, the German people, it's like a freak show. And on the, the German people as people, yeah, they're great people. At least some are. But in terms of the choices they're making as a society, you got to step back and say, are you crazy? Have you lost your minds? You're going and you're supporting the same old recipe that's brought you economic decline, the disappearance of the manufacturing sector. That's what people aren't getting. So that what Germany was in 2020, 2021, that's gone. That's not going to return. They used to have a relationship with Russia. So Siemens would make these electric turbines or generators, and different kind of major electrical equipment and machine tools and machine made parts that needed precision.
And good quality ones.
Yeah, and Russia would buy
especially washing machines they need for the missiles, right?
Yeah, take them out of the refrigerators too. Don't forget that. How dare you? But and it was sort of a mutually beneficial arrangement, because Germany was getting cheap energy from Russia. Russia was getting this high quality parts. Well, then come the sanctions and the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline. And Russia's like, okay, we'll make our own, because they're quite capable of making their own, which they are. Now that they're making their own, they don't need Germany. Germany's irrelevant to them. God, how the Germans can be this stupid is just mind-boggling. But they are.
I don't know if you remember that my friend Davidson, he comes from a German family. He used to say that Germans would eat shit before assuming they are wrong. That's the main sentence. But even like that, I've been talking to him the last days. He was telling me that his family that has been saying that you're wrong, you're saying stupid, you're saying crazy, are just starting to realize, damn, we screwed up pretty bad this time.
Yeah.
The thing that you mentioned, you said one thing that really caught my attention. I have never thought about that. Yes, we, and I used to say this in my live streams, we that pay attention on the details of geopolitics and stuff like that. We've been talking about Europe, France elections, Germany elections, but that's not making the big news in the newspaper, except for far right stuff. People are not concerned that whatever is happening in Europe, in the world. I mean,
the elections are meaningless. They're useless. They're a waste of time. They produce no outcome. This is the closest we can come to rearranging chairs on the deck of the Titanic. Just saying, oh, let's sit over here closer to this railing, or farther away from that railing, or let's go to port, let's go to starboard. The damn ship is sinking, folks. You ought to be doing something other than worrying about where you're seated on the deck. You want to get your ass into a lifeboat.
They are not even the guys playing in the nice music.
Yeah. So this is, I'm just it's sort of amazing to watch, and then because the Europeans they genuinely believe that what they say matters. And Trump doesn't care. Oh, he'll listen to him. He'll be polite. I mean, you saw what happened with Macron yesterday. So the way the press played it up was, Macron arrived, Trump's there to greet him. But what actually happened was, when Macron first arrived, they sent out some female staffer to say, to Macron, hi there, Mr. President, come on in. And then later, I guess Macron went to Trump and said, hey, can we do the arrival again, where, I get out of the car and shake your hand. And this time, notice when he got out, he wasn't wearing the overcoat. He was in the city, it's all staged. So Trump said, okay, well, sure, I'll do that. Phony, Jesus. And, if they think they're going to rope the United States into backing their effort to put in peacekeeping forces into Ukraine, Russia's not going to accept that. Allow the UK and the French and the Germans to post their military personnel right on Russia's border. they're smoking dope. They're taking cocaine. They're doing something because it's making them insane.
Talking about smoking dope and doing stuff.
Oh, Zelensky?
Let's talk about Zelensky.
Yeah. God, man.
I have a really, really important and serious question about Zelensky. How bad is the drug that people are giving to him? It seems like rotten for 10 years. What's the guy talking about, Larry? The guy said that, what did he say? That he was going to resign if Ukraine would get NATO or peace. Of course, he's talking peace on his terms. I'm not imagining that he's assuming that we're going to go over the Russian plan for peace or NATO. And then he resigns, all cool, all good for him. Or perhaps he's going to build his own NATO. Like that's how you do, Like, I don't know, you cannot afford to buy a house, you get a land and you buy yourself some wooden house. And that's what the guy wants to do, build his own NATO. No. What the hell is he talking about?
No, he's just, it's delusional. He is, these are sort of like the last desperate moments of this drama. I don't know if he will survive the summer. Probably not. Whether he is alive.
You mean politically or?
I don't know, politically or physically.
Or physically.
This could turn very, very quickly. The military situation on the ground for the Ukrainians is getting worse with each passing day. And Russia is moving steadily forward. The people, many military analysts, pundits in the West, continue to lie about this, continue to insist, that there's, that Ukraine has only given up a little territory and Russia's suffering staggering losses. I mean, they're lying to themselves, but they don't want to believe the alternative. And it seems that Zelensky has bought into that fantasy. He wouldn't be the first leader in history to believe a lie and to deceive himself and others around him. But the United States, it's clear that the United States is not going to continue to support this war. Because if it did, the United States increased its support to Ukraine, which would mean increasing attacks on Russia, then the risk of a war with Russia would become greater. Trump is interested in reducing that. It is a gargantuan task on his part because of the massive propaganda in the West to demonize Vladimir Putin and all of Russia. I wrote last night about one of my buddies. We have a mutual friend. My buddy Art has, his friend. He's closer friends with this former CIA officer, but this guy who worked at the CIA 30 years and retired in the last couple of years. He's a senior intelligence service. He was the equivalent of like a 2-star general. And he wrote my friend and said, hey, Trump is selling us out, basically, Trump's selling us out to the Russians. I fought those bastards for 40 years. So doesn't even recognize the changes, the fundamental changes that have taken place in Russia since the fall, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the reemergence of nationalist Russia, which is gives great emphasis to its Christian heritage. The Russia today, they keep describing it as an authoritarian state. Well, bullshit. the United Kingdom, that's an authoritarian state where you can get arrested for praying. Think about that. Praying, expressing
For praying, the local pray is not if you're from somewhere else. Is the local pray?
No, it's unbelievable. You know, I've been to, over the past year, I've been to Moscow twice and St. Petersburg once. Hardly saw any police. You know, the police presence is real, it's almost absent. It's really, really weird. And it's not like you got a bunch of watchers on the street. You know, I remember what it was like in Ukraine, in Kiev, back in 1994. You know, you checked into a hotel, you had a babushka, you know, giving you the old hairy eyeball, you know, watching you, what are you doing? You know, there was more active surveillance, you know, back then, 30 years ago. But now in Russia today, it's I would argue it's a more open, freer society than any of the states in Europe. But, you know, nobody wants to hear that. So there's this deep-seated hatred of Putin, hatred of Russia, and as such, getting the West off that drug of hatred is going to be a real challenge.
Exactly. This is what I don't know what I cannot understand that, because, you know, I'm Brazilian. As Brazilian, we are used to differences. We are very used to differences, and yeah, we have we can mostly, because we discussed this already, mostly is, you know, soft power that tells, oh yeah, Russia bad, you know, China bad, all those things, you know, Iran bad. But then you go somewhere. When I was traveling around, I was meeting people working different countries, meeting people from everywhere. It was always good people. Some assholes, of course, there is assholes everywhere. There were. I worked with great North Americans. I worked with great Indians, great Pakistanis, great Russians, great Chinese. Always great people. Yeah. Some of them were assholes, but that's nature, you know. Some Brazilians are assholes. That's normal. Larry, I would like to discuss the main topic of today, and this is the incredible video that came out from a Trump speech this weekend, I guess, or Friday, where he kind of put out some numbers of corruption, you know, very few numbers, but astonishing. I had a live stream yesterday about this, and I was, the comments from the people, I was laughing so hard from the comments, because he was talking about people with, you know, 150 years old, 200 years old, even one guy with 350 years old getting paid. I've been to 3 mandates of Lula, and the guy used to machine gun spitball, you know, bullshit numbers like no one else. Is this for real? I would like to start with that. Is this for real? Those data that the guy put out, Trump put out, is this for real?
Yeah, no.
Or he's just spitballing shit?
It appears to be real. You know, what they're uncovering is there has been fraud. This is, you know, I know some people interpret what Trump is doing as they're likening it to Adolf Hitler clearing out the bureaucrats in the Weimar Republic. You know, I think that's a poor comparison. You know, Trump is not Adolf Hitler. All right, Trump is, you know, whatever his flaws and faults and shortcomings, he is I guess a little insecure in that he always wants to be liked, but you know, people attribute that, oh, he's insecure, you know, he'll go out of his way to be liked. Well, frankly, that's like most human beings, okay? So
exactly.
You know, I don't fault him for that. But I think he genuinely believes in, perhaps sometimes naively, about putting America first without necessarily having really thought that through. But that said, when you look at how they hit the ground running on January 20th, so we're now 23, that was 10, 35 days ago.
35 days, 35, 36, yeah.
Yeah, or 36 days. They came with a plan. They thought this through extensively. For example, way back in 2021, when Joe Biden took office and was firing people that Trump had appointed to certain boards like the West Point board. One of the people that was being fired was Sean Spicer, who had been Trump's first press secretary. Not a very good one, but it was the first press secretary. Apparently, the Trump people told Spicer then, this was 4 years ago, go ahead and fight this. Take it to court. You're going to lose, but that's okay. You're going to set a precedent that the president can fire basically whoever he wants to fire. And so go ahead and do it. And they did it. And the judges ruled, yeah, no, Biden can fire that guy. Okay. Trump's going, great. You've now set the precedent. So what this shows is that they thought a lot of this through, and particularly with Russ Vought, the head of the Office of Management and Budget. He understood how you manipulate the money, how you control the money, how you basically take control of bureaucracies by seizing their money and making them accountable for it. The Washington bureaucracy they've not seen anything like this in living memory. I'm 70 years old. This has never happened in the last 70, 80 years. It's unprecedented, and it's shocking. And the number of people, a lot of people, there may be 100, 200,000 people lose their jobs up in the Washington D.C. area. They felt entitled, and they are finding out that they don't have a guaranteed job anymore. So Trump's serious about this.
Yeah, one thing that I am always concerned about this, and I was spot on yesterday. You just gave me a stamp from what I said, and I was saying that exactly this, not just yesterday, but the week before. Yeah, the dude is just cleaning the Democrats' crap, and well, he needs to put new people there. Probably he's going to put his own people. And although this sounds weird, I don't disagree with that. You have to have people that you can trust. Otherwise, you have a non-governable country, and you don't want that. And exactly, I do think that he was thinking this through for a long time. Say, okay, we have to clean all these layers. How can we do that? Scandals. This pension scandal, it's a very serious one. It's a very, very serious one. Plus, money abroad. He was saying money to circumcise people in Mozambique. I was like, I had an Angolan friend on the chat yesterday that say, what the hell are they looking for in the Mozambicans' yo-yos? So this kind of money, it needs to be clean. I don't have many, how can I say, I'm not so, missing the word here. I don't expect that this money is not going just to get another route. Do you know what I mean?
Well, look, the entire premise of USAID, I believe, is completely flawed. It's a relic of the Cold War, because when John F. Kennedy set up USAID, it was seen as sort of a counterpunch to the Soviets, who were providing assistance to people in what we then called the third world. Now we call it the global south.
An influence
both
injection.
sides, both the Soviets and the United States were competing for influence in the world at the time. Now, what the Soviets did is they brought a lot of students to Moscow to attend a university. Patrice Lumumba University in Moscow was one stop. The United States opted for this, paternalistic aid. The notion that, we're going to, the Agency for International Development. This was like seed money that was supposed to go out and help people build wells, do contour farming, install sewer systems, improve sanitation, just basic things. But it was, the United States given money. And within that, from the outset, there were CIA officers involved with that. In fact, when I got my master's degree in community development at the University of Missouri, and one of my professors was a fellow named David Anderson. And looking back, I realized he was CIA. He was agency all the way. But he found a gig after he got out of the agency, teaching at the university. The AID didn't come into its own really as a tool of the CIA until after the year 2000. I think it really started under George W. Bush. There'd been some activity, but the budget had never really been increased. It was $7 billion in 1990, and it was still $7 billion 10 years later in 2000, which, if you factor in inflation, was actually a cut. But then by 2008, the end of George W. Bush's first term, that number had almost doubled. Then under Obama, it increased another 50%. So, by 2016, Obama's last year, the budget was around $18 billion, 19 billion. Enter Donald Trump. And in 2019, that budget goes up to 42 billion. So with more than 100% increase. And that's when it was during that period, during Obama, you saw the color revolution in Ukraine, the Maidan. AID money was used to pay people to come to protest. It was used to pay for protest signs. It was used to pay for hotels, food, the logistics required to get people there. And meanwhile, the CIA with the Brits they had other programs apart from that to bring in provocateurs who ended up shooting and killing the protesters to help tip that over and force the removal of the government. That's what AID money was doing. Then, under Trump, I don't think Trump was aware, and certainly I don't think his Office of Management and Budget appreciated it at the time, but that amount of money was then, it was subsequently used to try to promote color revolutions in Romania. It was used against Viktor Orban's party in Hungary. It was an out of control political fund. They tried to overthrow the government in Georgia. They went after the government in Georgia because the government in Georgia had the audacity to say that foreign agents must register. Good Lord. I've had to, register as a foreign agent because of one client I have who's overseas. No big deal. Disclose it. I've got nothing to hide. But, AID wanted to stay in the shadows. So, that's when Trump came in and they went right after AID. They knew something. And we're beginning to discover, I don't know who had tipped them off, but it's clear that they were tipped off.
I was watching this. I believe it was the live stream from the Duran with Robert Barnes.
Yeah.
Amazing dude. I have to put in 0.5x because the guy's a machine gun of knowledge.
Yeah, no, he's great.
Yeah, but he speaks too fast.
Well, but you know how you deal with that.
I have to put in 0.5x or learn better English.
No. You just go to your YouTube settings and slow down the speed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I do. But then the live stream takes 4 hours instead of 2, which is already long. But Alexander was saying something, interesting perspective. Now, he was saying, well, we could say that the United States is the most corrupt country in the world, but now the corruption is being, shown up. And that kind of gives a credit. How do you feel about that? Because, in Brazil, the corruption is always on the fan, but we're still pretty corrupt. Not even talking about Europe, not even starting here. How do you feel about that? Because what I feel, a lot of numbers are coming out. Will this be clean? This is too much, but do you think this will be cleaned? Or do you think it's just going to change?
Probably not. Maybe some. Look, you've got to. This is one of those cases where I wish I'd won the lottery because then I could fund what needs to be done, which is let's publish first a score sheet. I'll give you an example. Lindsey Graham, when he first went into Congress, his net worth was $800,000. Now, as of last year, his net worth is between $42 and $82 million.
It's a darn good salary.
How do you become a multimillionaire like that when you're making $200,000 a year? Which, sounds like a lot of money if you're living in the countryside of Kenya or something. But Washington, D.C., that's a good, solid middle-class income. You're not going to get wealthy off of that. He's not the only one. Same, you can say that Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer. Just go through. Nobody has consistently tracked these. And so it's like, let's look at who's really getting rich off of being in government. And so what they're going to discover is a lot of these members of Congress that are so vocal and insisting that we need to continue support for Ukraine have in fact been getting paid by Ukraine, who's taking money given to it by the United States and recycling it back into the hands of these senators and members of the House of Representatives.
Yeah. And then we have Zelensky saying that we don't get 350 billion, we only got 90. Well, check those accounts. You're going to find some of that money there for sure. But that brings me back to Zelensky, Larry, and to go to our final thoughts on this. I was watching you on the Judge yesterday, and you said something that called a lot my attention. And that's the possibility of Zelensky facing charges of corruption, of money laundering in the United States. And just to complement that, just this week, there was, not to complement your perspective, but complement my question. Just this week, there was out a article saying that the French police found some villas and some land that Zelensky bought just after. Who was it that told Zelensky should go to France now?
Yeah, it was somebody on the Trump team said it. I never got a specific name.
Yeah. Plus, we have Arestovich basically saying that if he runs for president and get elected, Arestovich, for those who doesn't know, is former Zelensky BFF. He would jail Zelensky. So this look a lot like, people closing the pinches on Zelensky on all fronts. Like, you cannot go anywhere, dude.
Yeah, he's painted into a corner. He's banked a lot now on Europe's making all these promises. Oh yeah, we're going to give you $20 billion. We're sending you now $3.5 billion. At the very time that these European countries are in economic decline and chaos. So they really don't have the money to spend. They certainly do not have the industrial base to produce the weapons that Zelensky needs. And as Trump made clear, hey, the United States are happy to provide weapons to Ukraine, provided that Europe buys it from the United States, and then Europe gives it to Ukraine. Uncle Sam's going to get paid. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. And I just been looking at this, and for over a year, I've been saying that most likely we're gonna have one of those moments where someone is found, self-exit in a bunker, isolated with his wife. Like we had in the end of World War II.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, as we noted earlier, it's up in the air whether Zelensky physically will survive this.
The guy knows too much.
Well,
the guy just knows too much.
It's not so much he knows too much; it's that he becomes irrelevant. No longer, he's no longer relevant to anything. So you get rid of him. He goes away. Ukraine may survive. This is what the way the thing is currently being presented on the U.S. side is the U.S. wants to cut this major deal to get access to the raw materials in Ukraine, which means that U.S. investors would be there, the U.S. companies would be there. I'm not sure Russia's going to be real keen on that, because this would be the camel's nose under the tent approach to bringing back U.S. military support for Ukraine.
I forgot to ask that, but just to finish, I was reading your article about Zelensky selling the double selling the rare earth, not so rare, to Britain and to the United States.
Yeah.
Can you disclose a little bit about that? The article was so interesting. You even mentioned Mel Brooks, but the scenes I couldn't watch. Somehow Universal Studio blocks Italy from watching the scenes of the movies.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, you got it.
I'll send you a print.
That's too bad. Yeah, I took a couple of clips from the movie The Producers, which when Mel Brooks made, it was about a Jewish accountant and a Broadway Jewish showman. And they concocted this scheme that if they figured if they would put on a terrible play, a play that would lose money, but they would collect money from investors, and that when the play collapsed, they'd basically keep all the money and the investors would lose it. Well, and they decided what they're going to do is put on a musical about Hitler, and the title song was "Springtime for Hitler," and it's a great song. It's hilarious. Well, unfortunately they oversold it. They sold like shares. They're only supposed to sell, let's say, 100 shares. Well, they sold 10,000 shares, and each of those shareholders believe they owned 100% of the rights. So when the thing actually turned out to be a success, they all had a claim on the money, and then the guys didn't have the money to pay. Well, that's what Zelensky's doing. Zelensky is offering, oh, yeah, I cut a deal with the UK. Yeah, you can have this. We got some secret agreements we're not reporting in public. Then turns around and tries to cut the same deal with the United States. and then walks away from it, and then comes back and I mean, it's back and forth. It's ridiculous. So, just Zelensky's running a scam. That's the best way to look at it.
Yeah, this week I had a live stream with Farinazo, where we talk about Milei's, cryptocurrency, crappy cryptocurrency, and we were just looking at each other at some point and say, these people, Zelensky, Milei, these people are just phonies. How people can be so stupid to trust these people? It's amazing.
Yeah. They get taken in all the time,
Yeah, man, Mel Brooks, still one of the best producers in the planet. Every time I listen to someone saying Ursula von der Leyen, I heard the horses, brrr, on the back, like the young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
All right, man. That's fantastic. I'm working on a montage for that. Still not done. All right, man. Thank you very much. A lot of things happening, getting me dizzy, and not sleeping too much because of the intern, but trying to keep up. Still, I have some hopes of some stability, but that's just hopes. I don't brew them.
Well, I'll talk to you offline about next week.
All right, fantastic. So everybody, just remember, all the links are on the description. Remember to follow Larry on Sona21.com. The links of the Press of Mass Destruction are also on the description. LarryJohnson, my good friend, thank you very much once again, and see you. Bye, everybody. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.